Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have with us a very special individual. I consider him a guitar virtuoso. He's been on the scene for over 40 years and has worked with many greats from Billy Cobham, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Miles Davis, Jaco Pastorius, Michael and Randy Brecker, and Jeff Lorber, to name a few. He is a guitarist and composer. Please welcome to Jazz Talk, Mr. Mike Stern. Man, it's so good to see you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, bro. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, Mike, like I said, you've been on the scene, man, for like a long time, and you're a hero to so many musicians. I consider you a guitarist. And as I said, the longevity and just the time that you've been around has just been amazing. But I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about you and your background. Now, you are from Boston, but you grew up in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. I grew up I was about 3 years old when we moved to DC. So I grew up. Most of my years were early years were in Washington.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and DC was cool, man. There was just a lot of good music to check out. You know, in those days, I was learning more from listening to the radio and listening to records and stuff like that. So then reading. I didn't really learn all that stuff at first. It was just more by ear until I got more serious about trying to learn jazz. I used to listen to Hendrix, of course, and stuff that was on the radio, and a lot of Motown, a lot of soul music in Washington. I used to play along with the records. They were all great, really great. Sometimes that stuff comes up back on the air, you know, it's like one of those advertisements for all those tunes, and I start singing along, you know. That was all the coolest stuff. And so then I, you know, my mom used to play a lot of jazz records around the house. She used to play a little jazz piano and classical piano. And she was actually a pretty good classical player, you know. But then she was actually going to get serious about as a performer, but then she had 5 kids. You know, that kind of took a lot of her time. So, you know, it was kind of over the years, she had 5 kids. But she still played piano and played a lot of jazz records around the house, which I really dug. And I used to learn by playing along with the records, like I said. So I took some of those jazz records up to my room, and I got lost right away because the music just seemed different for me. It was more different keys, different, you know, all that different melodic statements and melodies. But I loved the music. So then I felt like I was kind of in a rut as a guitar player, just playing rock and blues and kind of rhythm stuff, funk stuff, and all that I was into. And then I kind of said, well, let me check this stuff out. And then I needed to learn more about music in general to get to figure it out. And it took a while. I thought I would never be fluent as a jazz player, you know. And then I just finally realized I love it so much. I'm gonna just go for it, you know.
Now, Mike, I wanted to ask you. You started playing at age 11.
Around 11 years old, or 12, something like that, early 12 or late 11. And yeah, so I was playing, but got serious when I was about 19, 20, something like that. I went for one summer to Berklee College of Music, but before then I had a couple of teachers it was a lot of years ago, so I can't remember their names, in DC. And you know, I was trying to learn how to read and all that stuff. So I started to get into it. But then when I went to Berklee, of course, I got into it more intensely.
And I wanted to ask you about that. You were at Berklee in your early 20s, and I understand that you studied with Pat Metheny. And I was reading, Pat Metheny said that Mike Stern was my star pupil. You know?
Yeah, well, he liked my playing. You know, we're good friends now. You know, and I don't see him much, but we're just tight. Whenever I see him, it's like, you know, one of those things where you're a friend to somebody, and you just, it's almost like, well, hadn't seen him for a few years, but it's, it doesn't matter. It's like, it just, so he was always really supportive of me. He liked something that I guess he liked, of course, I think that he knew I was going to really work as hard as I could to try to get good at playing. And he was amazing already. I mean, he was like 12 years old when he was teaching at Berklee or something like that. No, he was like, but it seemed like, and so he was really already playing his ass off. Yeah. But he really helped me. He was the one who recommended for an audition with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then I went for the audition, thinking I wasn't going to get the gig, but it would just be a really good, a good experience just to play with a band like that, even for a minute, just for the audition. And then I got the gig, which I was definitely not expecting. So I was going to finish up Berklee, but then I didn't. I went there. I had gone there for 3 years, and then I split and started playing with Blood, Sweat, Tears. It was a great band. They were.
That was with Bobby Colomby, right?
Bobby Colomby was playing drums.
Yeah.
And Bobby had just produced Jaco Pastorius' first record.
Self-titled, yeah, that's
right.
So
Jaco was in the band, because Ron McClure had been playing bass. Fantastic bass player, but it was time for him. He wanted to do some other stuff, so he split. And Jaco, and then we were without a bass player, and Bobby said, "Hey, would you be into doing this for a couple until we find somebody more regular?" And Jaco said, "Sure, man, I'll do it." So he played in the band for about 3 months.
Wow.
And Spinning Wheel never sounded quite so good.
Mike, I wanted to ask you about that because Pat talks about that too. And the late guitarist Hiram Bullock said that to see Jaco in the early 70s, he was better way before he got with Weather Report, but in the early 70s, he was just unbelievable on the instrument. And Pat was just talking about him, how great he was. But, you guys were together in those early years. So after Blood, Sweat, and Tears, you hooked up with Billy Cobham. Man, what was that like playing with Billy?
Amazing. I mean, Billy was just phenomenal and still is. I mean, he's just such a swinging drummer. And of course, we were rocking more and funking more, we were playing more, but he could do everything. So we did some swinging stuff too. Actually, I wrote a blues that we kept playing. It was called Bruce. I wrote it for a Japanese trumpet player, a friend of mine, Tiger Akoshi, an amazing trumpet player. He couldn't play it on trumpet, but I love Tiger, so I named the tune after him. It's definitely not trumpet range or anything like that, but I wanted to just dedicate it to him. He was an incredible player that I played with in Boston, Tiger Akoshi. But so I played with Billy for about a year or so, and then we did a couple of tours, and then we had one gig at the Bottom Line, and this I had met Bill Evans, the saxophone player.
Oh yeah.
And Bill told me that he was playing. He came up to play with me in Boston. He told me, I'm playing with Miles Davis. I didn't believe him at that time. No way. But I knew Bill could play because we played a couple gigs at this little small club in Boston. And then Bill called me and he said, I'm not sure. He really liked my playing. That was the first time we played together at this little tiny club. And Bill had heard that I was playing up there and he just wanted to come up and play. So we somehow managed to hook that gig up. And he told me he was playing with Miles. Then he said Miles wasn't getting along great with the guitar player that he had. A cat that was amazing guitar player, amazing, but somehow personally they weren't getting along. So Bill said, maybe if, there's an opening, if somehow something changes, I'll recommend you. So I was playing with Billy Cobham. After we had been on tour, we took some time off, and then we were at the Bottom Line, great club that used to be in New York. And I was playing with him, and Bill called me on the payphone. In those days, that's what they had.
Right.
And he called me on the payphone on the wall there at Bottom Line. He said, I'm bringing Miles down to hear you, so you play your ass off. So I did the best I could. I certainly wanted to Miles to like it, you know. But of course I was always playing good because Billy was there. I mean, he was kicking my ass. He was kicking everybody. You could not play with that behind you, you know.
Right.
So and Miles said, you know, he called Billy off the bandstand. And all of a sudden we were still playing and no drummer, you know, and Billy went backstage for 2 seconds because Miles had come up and just yelled from her, had somebody come up and just say, Miles wants to talk to you, you know. So Billy split. We're still playing just for a minute. And then when I got out the bandstand, I said, you know, Miles said for you to show up at Studio B tomorrow at Columbia Records.
Oh, wow.
So I went there and played. And Miles said, yeah, I dug you playing, blah, blah, blah. He wanted me to play over something that was already done. And I didn't hear it. You know, I said, you don't need anything over this. Much as I wanted to play, he just said, play over everything. And he just wanted me to solo over it. And I said, that's going to mess it up. So about a week later, we cut that tune, Fat Time, which was the one.
We Want Miles was the first recording, right?
It was Man with the Horn. That's the one with Fat Time. Okay. Yeah, that's the one with Fat Time on it. That was actually the last tune they put on that record, but it ended up being the first tune on the record because it came out. It had a nice vibe. You know, Marcus Miller's Miles kind of had this abstract idea. It's pretty clear in his mind, but I mean, when sometimes he would, you know, say stuff and you kind of have to figure it out. He didn't sometimes want it to be that clear. He wanted to let people do what they wanted to do, but at the same time, it was clear. If you didn't do what he wanted to do, he'd let you know. Right. So, but the vibe it took off by itself. And Marcus was a key part in putting stuff together. And of course, Al Foster was playing drums. I mean, the two of them, such an amazing rhythm section, so unique, you know. So I ended up playing with Miles after that for a while, you know, and that was an amazing experience, of course, you know, for me.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, now after that, after playing with him, I think you hooked back up with Jaco in the early 80s, like 83, 84, and you guys started playing again. Now, let me ask you this, Mike. By then, you know, of course, Jaco was having some issues. Maybe he was probably different than the Jaco that you played with earlier in '75. But you guys did some gigs together. And what was it like playing with him during that period?
He was killing. He was playing his ass off, still always playing great, playing amazing. I mean, there was no stopping him. And the only problem is it was disorder. You know, he had issues. He was getting high like crazy. I was too at the time. Yeah. Matter of fact, even I was so bad, he was kind of taking care of me. But I don't want to get too deep into that. But it was bad.
I got you, man. I got you.
At one point, I cooled out and was kind of telling him, man, you got to try to do this. You know, it's not going to go well for you. And I really thought he was getting it. At the end, you know, a couple of years after I'd been sober, he came up to me and he said, man, you've been doing this for a while. He never thought I'd hang with it, you know? Yeah. And I stayed strong and had plenty of help. You know, I was going to where I needed to go to try to cool out, do all the things that I needed to help, because it's hard to do this. It's impossible to really get off that stuff by yourself. Right. So, and I told him about that. He was really seriously asking me about it. So I thought he was really bottoming out and getting ready to really cool out. And then 6 weeks later, boom, he pissed off somebody who was a black belt, and the rest of it is unfortunate. Yeah.
And, you know, sad. And Mike, you just made me
he was
think
a
about
great.
something.
Yeah, he was a great cat too, man.
Yeah,
he was a great cat. Funny.
I hear that.
Yeah, you know, and yeah.
You just made me think about something. You know, Pat Metheny gets very touchy on the Jaco stories, because he said all these stories he hears about Jaco does not line up with the same guy that he knew in the early days. Because this is back then, you know, he was clean, he didn't do drugs, he didn't drink or anything. But I guess by the time he got with Weather Report, he had, you know, the bipolar thing, and he had some other issues. But yeah, just a great musician, great human being, and his mom and his dad were
professional drinkers. They were alcoholics, absolutely drunk most of the time, and sweethearts. You know, I didn't know his mom well. I knew his dad really well. He was a fantastic singer, a musician. Just in terms of what Jaco was exposed to, his dad really didn't. You know, he used to sing a little bit and had a good voice, a natural talent. You know, great time feel, all that stuff. You could tell where it came from, but he never explored it like Jaco. He never got into it like Jaco. But Jaco was an accident waiting to happen. I mean, I kind of understand the disease of alcoholism now, you know, because I know it firsthand. Yeah. And it was going to happen sooner or later. He was, when I knew him and when Pat knew him too, he didn't sleep. Jaco didn't sleep. He didn't sleep much. He had his issues, you know, bipolar, all that stuff. But mainly, and he was sober in Blood, Sweat, and Tears completely. When he was in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, he was completely straight. But he was kind of white knuckling it. He was just holding on. And then it got to him. Yeah, it was waiting to happen, unfortunately. And then when it did happen, he just didn't fight it. He just kind of got worse and worse, and that's the sad thing. And then when he was getting ready, and that's often what happens. And when you get ready, you hope you'll survive that when you really bottom out, because then it's really bad. And he didn't survive it. It's a tragedy. But man, he sure left some great music.
Yes, he did, man.
And great memories for a lot of people.
And I wanted to talk to you about your debut recording, Upside Downside. Man, that's still one of my favorite recordings from you. When I heard Mood Swings, I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, this has got to be the funkiest record I've ever heard. You guys were just grooving on that. I'm like, wow. And the playing was just exceptional. And still to this day, one of my favorite recordings. And I guess not long after that, you hooked up with Randy and Michael Brecker. What was it like playing with those guys?
Oh, amazing. I mean, Mike was just, he was trying to help Jaco too, because he had already been through the same thing too. He went through similar stuff. But he was just an amazing cat to play with him. I played with Michael's band for a while. Then I played with both of them, Mike and Randy. They're both incredible, obviously amazing musicians. And I miss Mike all the time. And I'm right now I miss Randy because we haven't played for a while, because we play a lot together. And so I hope we can get playing sometime soon next year. I'm praying that they'll have this stuff kind of happening.
I hope so too, man.
Yeah, we're going crazy. But one cat that, of course, I played with a lot and recorded with on a record called Odds or Evens, I remember. Well, Dennis Chambers. He's on a lot of my records.
I was about to bring up Dennis. Dennis is pretty much he's a good friend of mine, and he lives maybe 20 minutes from me. We were actually talking about you. Great drummer, man. One of the best. You've done a lot with him. What is it like playing with Dennis?
Killing. Yeah. Killing on all fronts. Swinging his ass off, his spirit, you know, all this amazing just knowledge that really comes from just listening, you know. Dennis is kind of a genius. I would say he's a genius without a doubt. And he just listened and picked up stuff. It wasn't like he doesn't read particularly well. Maybe he doesn't read at all, but he doesn't need to. He can learn. I mean, the hardest music he learns. So it's really more than exceptional. So I love playing with him. You know, it's amazing.
Now, Mike,
I've been really blessed to play with all these great drummers like Weckl. Dave Weckl, another one that's just phenomenal. You know,
yes, he is.
And Carlock and those guys. But Dennis, we really have played so many years together with Bob Berg and
the late Bob Berg. Yeah, what a great player. I love Bob Berg.
Yeah. And Jeff Andrews was also in that band originally. And he was badass too. Jeff was incredible, and he's gone too, unfortunately. He was he lived down in your neck of the woods, right? Did you know him?
I know all those guys very, very well, man. All the guys I played with. And I was going to ask you, now, I think maybe was it 4 or 5 years ago, you suffered an injury with your shoulder or something happened to you, and you had to stop touring. But the funny thing is, Mike, it seems like you pick things up real quick. And over the last several years I've seen you, man, it seems like your playing's gotten even better. So
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
I don't know what you've been doing or how you're practicing, man, but you sound great. And actually, you were in a group. This is maybe before the injury. Four Generations of Miles. With
Yeah,
Buster Williams, the late Sonny Fortune, and the late Jimmy Cobb. And that was
yeah.
fantastic. I caught you guys, man. How did that come about? What was the the meaning behind putting that group together?
Well, originally it was a cat that for Chesky Records, David Chesky. That
Hmm.
was his concept. He just thought, well, let us put this band together. He asked me and Ron Carter and George Coleman and Jimmy Cobb to make this record. We did it no real I insisted on rehearsal. I said we never played together before. We got to rehearse, and
Right.
so I'm glad we did. And then we just played standards, that Miles had played, and we just played them, in front of a live audience and with one microphone. That's what they were into at Chesky Records. It was kind of a different way of playing, but it was cool. It sounded good. A different way of recording,
Yeah.
not with a bunch of mics and all. So it sounds different than other records. As a 5.1, one of those surround sound things, sounds great.
Yeah.
And as a stereo record, it sounded still good, really good. And the playing was actually really cool, even though we never played together before. It was real fresh. We were all like checking everybody out. Of course, to play with those guys was, Ron Carter.
Oh yeah.
And George Coleman, incredible, and Jimmy, of course. And then the band kind of changed to Sonny Fortune, who was a phenomenal saxophone player, of course, and just a wonderful person. And I miss him too. And then Jimmy was still in the band. I miss him now too, because we lost him not too long ago. He was 90 though. I don't, those guys lived a good long life.
Yeah, Jimmy was like in his early 90s. He passed away a few months ago. He had a great drummer. I just called him Keystone Corner in Baltimore. I think it was January, February.
Yeah, I heard about that gig.
He played his butt off. I was there.
He was swinging his ass off, right? He was always playing. And then so Jimmy and then Buster Williams was playing bass. Whew. I mean, you can't.
Buster's great.
So I was really honored to be playing with them, and I hope we do that again in some kind of configuration, because it was a group. We could play standards and just blow. We didn't have to play anything else, and that's what we did. And it was really a groove. So that was a pleasure. I was actually playing with them before the accident and then after. I just kept it going. I found a way to play. I still have to use glue on my with the pick to hold it, but I figured out a way to keep playing. And so
man, you didn't miss a beat, man. You sound great. Like I said, every time I've seen you, because when I heard about your injury, I'm like, oh no, not Mike. And then it's like not long after that, you picked it up again, and like, wow, this guy hasn't lost anything. You sound great.
Oh, thank you, man. But, it's a challenge. It was a challenge. It's definitely even better still, but it keeps getting better. You get used to whatever. Yeah. But you gotta fight. You gotta, you can't. I bitch and moan about it all the time, but I'm still gonna hang in there and keep going.
Oh, man.
And then you figure out a way to keep going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Now, Mike, I wanted to ask you, I think in 2017, you came out with some instructional videos. Was it Stern Burn, if I mistaken? You came out with some instructional videos. Tell me about that. I think that was 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure about that. Yeah. There was some. I don't know what they called that, but some structure. I think Berklee Legrand did that too.
If I'm not mistaken, I think so.
And Pat Martino, I think it was the same. Yeah, that was So I did something, and it was really I'm not even sure what they call it, but I heard some of it. I just did it, and then they took some time to put it out. But it really, I thought it was really good, man. The way they did it, it was very well done. And transcribed a whole bunch, had me play on different tunes and play certain things, and it came out really nice, man. Really, I thought it was you know, when the cat asked me to do it, I'd seen Berklee's example because he had already done it before with Berklee Legrand, who's an amazing, you know, Dennis played with him too, incredible guitar player.
Yeah, Jaco played with him too. Yeah.
Yeah, Jaco said, "Man, this cat can kick my ass on the bass." Yeah, they were, I mean, Jaco was funny as hell. He's really amazing. Yeah. So Berklee did that, and Pat Martino also. So then I said I'd love to try to do it. So I did it. This was after that accident, but I was playing, and it came out good, and it was so that thing is available now, I guess.
Yeah. And Mike, I wanted to ask you, I guess recently you've hooked up with Jeff Vorber. You've been playing with the keyboardist Jeff Vorber. Tell us about that collaboration, how you guys hooked up.
Well, that was a strange one for me because I didn't know his music that much. I had heard about him. Everybody said, "Oh no, he sounds really good." And when you play live, he's a lot more energy, and because sometimes some of the records are geared for a different kind of a thing, a different sensibility, and he does it in a different way. So Jimmy Haslip was the guy that said, well, you guys should hook up just as a thing. So I just kind of went for it. I just said, okay, that sounds cool to me. I didn't know his stuff that well. And then when we played, he wanted to do half, you know, we both decided to be half of my tunes, half of his tunes. And my tunes are a little bit more, some of them, or a couple lyrical things, and some of them were rocking. He was right there, man. He was rocking his ass off, you know.
Yeah.
So he had plenty of energy, and then his tunes, he writes beautifully, and real. He's got some stuff that's very cool. I was very impressed the way he produces, just his knowledge of music in general, especially in the R&B world, you know, and that world, pop world. I think he told me recently he played on Beyonce's. It was a few months ago, but on Beyonce's last record, he was asked to play. You know, he's like very in-demand cat for certain things because he knows that groove. He knows what will fit and how to get things sounding just right, and is really amazing at that. So really great production, you know, and that's an art, man. That's some stuff. So he really took over and did the whole producing kind of thing. And then we did a few gigs. It was fun, man. We did some stuff in Europe, and I was going crazy with this entry. I was bitching and moaning about it all the time. He said, "Man, I don't hear no difference, man. You sound great, blah, blah, blah." And I was, you know, because it felt funny, but that's the way it is. You just keep going. So he was really supportive the whole time, and it was fun. We'll probably do a bit more together, you know. I want to do some other stuff, different kinds of stuff. I'm not even sure what now, but a couple different directions, you know, maybe something more straight ahead and something more. Well, you know, I'd like to do some stuff with some Nashville guys, you know, those guys that play country, you know, play like, not country because there's great. I mean, Keith Carlock lives down there in Nashville, and maybe some people from New Orleans, but in that acoustic stuff. And I got some stuff that I'm trying to write kind of in that vein, something different, you know.
Yeah.
I did a project, some of these projects that are different, after a while you want to do some different stuff and play with some people just because you think, wow, that might sound cool, you know, that kind of hookup. Me and Eric Johnson put some stuff together, you know. We did a record. I don't know if you heard that one with Eric Johnson.
I have not. I gotta check that out. Yeah.
Check it out. It's called what's it called? Eclectic.
Okay.
Yeah, and it really was eclectic. It was like we did a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of cool stuff. Anton Fig was the drummer on that.
Yeah,
and it really came out good, man. Yeah, it was nice. It was a nice project. So I learned a lot from just throwing myself into unexpected places. You know, you learn all the time. So I kind of welcome those collaboration kind of things, or putting myself, if it's my own project, getting cats. Not necessarily that I've always played with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But although I always want to try to as often as possible, I want to get Dennis, or, you know, just because that feels so good. And we got a relationship. He knows what what I like to hear. I know what he likes to hear. You know, it's once you can't beat that. You know?
No, and that's something.
Plus, he's, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
You know, I was just saying, he's just such a badass anyway. He can play.
He
Plays. I've heard him do stuff where we were reading charts, and we were on a, you know, in Europe sometime. His part was we had to fix stuff, and he was like nailed it, you know, first time. I mean, he's got this memory for music, and I don't know how he does it, man.
Phenomenal drummer, man. Phenomenal drummer.
Yeah.
Now I was going to ask you, Mike. You also toured. You mentioned Jimmy House. You toured with the Yellow Jackets too, didn't you? Briefly.
Yeah. That was another project that I loved. That's when I met Jimmy, and that's why when he recommended Jeff, I thought, well, if Jimmy's saying it, he's probably got something in mind that'll be cool, you know, because I wasn't sure. I didn't know Jeff's music that well, you know.
Yeah.
But it worked out, and Jimmy was really, really amazing. You know, as he's an amazing bass player and an amazing also producer. He's just got a sense for the whole picture. And the Yellow Jackets was incredible. Boy, what a fun record. That was Life Cycle. It was called Life Cycle. And we did that record together. That was a ball, man. That was really special. I was so happy to be involved with them. Russ Ferrante and Bob Mintzer, forget it, those cats, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, Mintz writes big band stuff. He was writing for Buddy Rich when he was 25, like big band stuff. You know? Yeah, he's doing stuff like that. He's got stories like crazy. I mean, he's just a phenomenal musician.
Yeah.
And a great tenor player, of course. And Russ Ferrante, forget it. He's just incredible. I was grabbing, we were on the bus, you know, we had a tour bus, and I was like in the back with him saying, man, show me some more stuff. You know, he was always, I was like a kid in a candy store with that guy. He had so much stuff, and he was trying to show me, he was writing stuff down. He's an amazing musician, Russ Ferrante.
Wow.
Beautiful composer, man. Awesome.
Yeah, you play. I said, you played with so many.
That was a treat.
You played with so many great people. As I said, Miles, Jaco. You know, Pat Metheny loves you. You know, Dennis Chambers. Did you ever play with drummer Vinny Colaiuta?
Yeah, records. I knew Vinny in music school. I used to play with him at Berklee. We were there at the same time.
Oh wow!
That was a kind of a cool time. Neil Steubenhouse was there at the same time. We used to play together a lot. Great bass player, and you know, and then they played together a lot in different projects. And Vinny, I knew Vinny well. I know him very, very well, and so we played together. We hadn't, you know, he moved the so I think together, but he played on a few of my records.
Yeah,
awesome.
Great drummer. Yeah, great drummer. Well, listen, Mike, I want to thank you so much for being on Jazz Talk today, man. You're a treasure. Love you. You're actually one of my favorites, and I've had basically most of my favorite guitarists on here. You, of course, you today. I had John McLaughlin on. Had Al Timiola on, and maybe someday I'll get Pat on here too. But it's just been a pleasure talking to you today. And hang on, I'm about to close out the show. Well, you've heard it from the great Mike Stern. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.